Welcome, my darling pretties, to our Beyond the Dawn of Business podcast for pretty, empowered female entrepreneurs. It's time to step into your power, pretties. Lift each other, support the squad, and choose a life filled with the autonomy and freedom to live your dreams. I'm your host, Dawn Beth, owner and founder of Beyond the Dawn digital business brand and agency. My coffee is hot and my eyelashes are on, so we are ready to go. Hi and welcome to today's episode. Today I'm going to talk to you about ADHD and overwhelm. I'm going to talk about lots of different things when it comes to overwhelm, not just neurospicy, but just overwhelm for all of us in general. Now, a little disclaimer, whenever I talk about ADHD, I like to remind you that I don't have a doctorate currently. I am not a medical professional. I'm only ever speaking from a place of my personal lived experience. And I think that's really important to share, because although lots and lots of my clients come to me and work with me because I am ADHD, and so are they, and they appreciate that there will be a level of lived understanding between us, I'm not ever going to market my business towards ADHD exclusively, and I'm not trying to diagnose nor tell you what you should do with your life either. But I do think it's really important that we have the conversations about the things that perhaps aren't perfect or squeaky clean, because at the end of the day, we are all human in lots of different varieties, and we all have different things that we struggle with. And yet a universal one, a global one, and every single human one that comes up quite regularly is, of course, overwhelm. So for me, overwhelm presents in my brain a little bit like a traffic jam. Or to give a really different visual to that, actually, if you can imagine like a 6-year-old girl, and she stood in a library and she has 2 or 3 heavy books in her arms, and she's picking up books and she's stacking them. And then eventually she can no longer move either of her arms because she's holding the weight of all of those books. So a helpful librarian or an external force of some sort will come and continue to add those books to the pile, so much so that the books are so incredibly heavy that she cannot move anywhere. She has choices. She either opens up her arms and lets all the books fall, but that would be very disappointing because she wants to deal with all these books. She wants to take the books somewhere. She wants to carry them somewhere. She doesn't want them to just fall all over the floor. Some of the books are glass, and if they fall, will break permanently. And some of them are rubber ball books that will bounce and be fine, but not all. And they're all mixed in together. Okay, there's a massive, massive line of heavy books in her arms. It's not easy to distinguish at this moment which books would be okay if they got set down and which ones need to be dealt with more delicately and more immediately. It's not very easy to see which books are fragile, which books are old, which books are new, which ones are hardback, which ones are paperback, because they're all muddled in together. Another visual way to describe overwhelm when it happens for me is there being a roundabout and there being hundreds of cars charging towards the same roundabout, and none of the cars going round the roundabout properly, and all of them trying to drive over the roundabout at the same time, thus blocking each other and creating a monumental traffic jam where you can't even tell which part is road, which part is the roundabout, because the entire place is jammed up with cars that cannot move. They can't go forwards, they can't go back, they can't go sideways, because they've all smushed in together, crashed together, and they are all now forcing each other in one state of paralysis. That is how overwhelm happens for me. Now, the problem with that is that in both instances, whether we're talking about a little girl with her arms who can't move because the whole thing will fall down, or the cars that can't go anywhere because they're all collected and jammed in by each other, what that is for me is a complete paralysis of the mind. When that happens to me, I'm no longer able to fully function. I can't figure out which car needs to reverse first in order to allow the slow movement of all of those cars to come away. I cannot figure out which book needs to be taken off the pile in order for the light and load to happen so that she can put the remaining books down and walk away. In that moment, there is nothing to be done, but nothing. Because whilst that happens, the tangle of wool that is my brain, there is no end that you can slowly pull at to release it. It just needs a minute to stay where it is, doing absolutely what it's doing, and for there to be a complete break. Okay. My brain works like 100 lily pads that all have little tiny froggies jumping from lily pad to lily pad all of the time. And I know that some of my friends that have been diagnosed with ADHD have considered taking medication to support them, and some of them found it absolutely liberating when they actually had that part of their brain switched off. I personally don't know who I would be without the complete and constant chaos that happens in here. I'm so used to it. I don't know whether I would like it if I didn't have it. I'm so comfortable with it. That's not to say that there's anything wrong with medication and that I won't try it in the future. I might. I'm not giving myself any parameters. If things ever got to a point where I felt like I needed to explore that, I would certainly explore that. But at the moment, I'm okay with it because I have different techniques that I use for the struggles that come with ADHD that help me be a functioning adult most days. Not all of them, but most days. And for the other things, if I come across them and they become a problem, then I'll tackle that at the time. I think also because it was so late in the day for me when I got diagnosed that I have all of these different coping mechanisms now that feel like routine, that feel like they are totally habitual, that I don't really want to rock that boat. I'm really comfortable with certain things and I'm always working on other things, but not everything at the same time. I take one little thing and I work on it. Like at the moment, I'm working on my bedtime routine and making sure that I don't allow my hyper focus to change my bedtime. I've not done very good with that in June and July. Writing a book in 12 days will stop you from having a decent bedtime routine, especially seeing as I was not writing the book in my day-to-day working day life because I had too much work to do during my normal working days. I was very much picking that up once I'd put the children to bed. I was then making myself a strong coffee, also not always recommended in the evening. But I was allowing myself to fall down the hyper focus of the audience attraction method book, which I'm very glad I did now because it was a massively successful book launch and we did get Amazon bestseller. We got #1. So, I mean, at the time I was like, why am I doing this? Will anybody even care? I hope my pretties enjoy this. And then 3 weeks later, I'm looking at Amazon thinking, wow, I really did do the right thing there and it was totally worth it. And because of my ADHD, that hyper focus can come on for me fairly regularly. And I have to usually manage it. Now, this time I leaned into it and I have leaned into it before. I've made entire websites in one evening and done all-nighters and done all sorts of crazy stuff that has been helpful for my business, but perhaps not great for my health. So I have to make sure that I don't lean into it too often. I have to make sure that there is a worthy cause for it if I'm going to use it as a superpower. And then I re-regulate my routine to take care of my body and my mind, not just allow myself to fall into these kind of dopamine pools. And that's essentially what they are for me. being able to do the thing the moment I want to do the thing is really, really enjoyable for me. Like, for instance, sometimes coming and doing podcasting is not on my agenda. I love doing these podcasts and I really, really enjoy them. And I know so many of my pretties enjoy them, and I want to show up for you guys, which is why I have created habitual routines around them. But there has been occasion where my girls have had to say to me, Dawny, you need to stop editing that video now. You need to go and do some podcast recording. Here's the schedule. I wrote my own schedule. Here's the schedule. Go and do it. And I'll be like, oh, I'm not really feeling like doing podcasts. And they will be like, Dawny, you need to go do it now. Because I am really good at leaning into the thing that I want to do right now, but I have to be real disciplined to understand that actually there's more to it than just what I want to do. And that's something I love doing. I love doing podcasting. Can you imagine what it's like forcing me to sort out my bookkeeping or my taxes? Ugh. But I do it. There are disciplines, and those disciplines support me in not being overwhelmed. And it's really important to me because the overwhelm, when I get it, can be devastating. Sometimes that overwhelm will take merely 15 to 20 minutes to pass. I might have a cry, let the frustration out, have to make a ridiculously long to-do list, make myself promises about how attainable that to-do list is, even though we all know that it was never going to be. And then I can get on with something, and something will move, and the car will reverse, and the movement will begin, and I'll tick something off the list, and it will be better, and it will be helpful. Or I'll stop and I'll sit with my children, and I'll actually spend some time away from the traffic jam and allow myself a completely different distraction, and that will help. What I find really helps is not allowing myself to get to that place of overwhelm to begin with. And quite often, the overwhelm belongs to me. I have created the environment from which I can be overwhelmed. I have created the chance for me to have too much on and not enough time. I have been the person who has decided that these 6 million jobs need to be completed within a time frame that is not possible. And those are the areas of life, regardless of whether you have a spicy brain like me or whether you have a lovely, clear, neurotypical brain that doesn't give you all of this chaos. It doesn't matter. I genuinely believe that we all have our things, regardless of which category or label you'd put yourself in. So many people don't want to go and have an ADHD assessment because they don't want to be labeled, and I totally get it. I don't actually think that it is a one thing or another thing. I feel like it is a spectrum, and we're all on it somewhere, even if just a teeny weeny bit, or even if like on the really, really thick side of it, doesn't matter. Also, if you suffer mentally with overwhelm, with stress, with anxiety, with imposter syndrome, with mindset issues, like, does it matter what the label is? Doesn't matter. The best thing you can do is create opportunities that work for you. Create routines that work for you, structures, opportunities to rest, opportunities to play, opportunities to do the things that need to be done, even if you don't feel like them. Maybe it's something really simple for somebody else, like washing up or getting in the shower. But for some of us, those things are not simple. For some of us, those things are really difficult because they come with a strange and very difficult to explain emotional and mental weight. It feels like a big deal, and therefore it is a big deal. Now, what I always liken this to, and regardless of what you've got going on for you, is I had a great conversation once with a friend who has a chronic illness. And she explained to me the idea of energy exchange and in terms of spoons. And I'd never heard of that before. And I thought it was very, very interesting. And she said to me, some days I wake up and I have 5 spoons. And on a 5 spoon day, I can do a bit of work. I can clean my house. I can take care of my hygiene. I can take care of my dog. And I might even be able to have a conversation with a friend for an hour before I'm completely and utterly exhausted. And some days I might wake up and I've got 1 spoon. And on those days, it's lucky if I wash and eat. And that made me feel so incredibly seen. And I don't have a chronic illness. I don't have any reason to look at my energy in terms of spoons, or, I don't have any right to assume that my energy levels, my possibilities might be hindered in certain ways in that spectrum. When you have that conversation and you recognize that some people will have 100 spoons and some people will have 2 spoons, and it doesn't really matter about how many you have. It's about doing what you need to do with however many spoons you have. And that actually we're all worthy of recognizing what energy we have and what we can do to make things easier for ourselves on the days when we perhaps do not have the energy or the capacity to be 100 spoon day. And it comes down to another concept that I was introduced to from another fantastic entrepreneur, Helen Ferguson. If you haven't gone and followed her, please do. She's amazing. She's a therapist, but she's so much more than just a therapist. She's a wonderful, wonderful human being that has got lots of fantastic ideas around self-compassion. And one of the reasons that Helen has always been really inspirational to me is because I believe that I had easily the first 32 years of my entire existence without any self-compassion whatsoever. So the whole idea of self-compassion was mind-blowing to me. And it's changed me forever, and it's changed the work that I do. It definitely informed me wanting to get into positive psychology, and it 100% has made me a better mentor for the people that I coach and teach. And I think if you haven't embraced the idea of self-compassion in a really deep and fulfilling way, you must consider it, especially if you're neurospicy, but definitely if you're a human. If you're a robot listening to this right now, maybe not. The reason why that's so important is because overwhelm comes in at the opportunity of judgment. Overwhelm, stress, and all of these things that could cause for you to have a really bad medical situation or mental break, they actually come from within. And there are ways that you can control to a certain degree. There, of course, are external factors, but there are ways day to day that you can control your environment, your internal environment, in a way that allows for you to have full self-compassion and to get through the tough times in an easier way. You might decide today you're going to take the day off work and you're going to invite the children and all the pets to join you in bed whilst you watch Disney movies and eat popcorn. That's okay. Give yourself permission to do that stuff when you need to do it. You might decide that you're going to change that meeting that's going to require a lot of energetic spend from you to a different part of your month based on your menstrual cycle. Or if you're perimenopausal or menopausal right now, you might just decide to cancel because today you woke up and you're dealing with a whole host of stuff that you didn't know was going to be there when you made that meeting. That's okay. As long as you do it in the right way, you do it in a way that isn't going to hinder you in the future. Do what you need to do. Give yourself that self-love. Give yourself that self-compassion. And if you do find yourself in the spiral of an overwhelm with a mental twister going on inside, where you're picking up everything from, the sheds and the moo cows and the trees, and they're all just whirling up to the internal sky, maybe just stop and breathe and give yourself the opportunity to really unravel that overwhelm from a place of paralysis, but paralysis that you choose, rest that you choose, stop still in time and don't allow any more spoons to be spent. Because I genuinely do believe that when we get to overwhelm, it is a message. It's a message from our body, it's a message from our soul, it's a message from our brain telling us that it is time to reevaluate, that it is time to stop, to take a break, to have that self-compassion, to give yourself what you actually need rather than trying to do all the things you're trying to do. And that is something that we don't give ourselves. We give ourselves the opportunity to spiral into really, really difficult places and burn out. And burnout helps nobody. You're not helping anybody by burning out, least of all yourself. Now, if you find yourself feeling quite overwhelmed, I wonder if you could give yourself like a standard rule that would allow you that moment. I sometimes like to force myself to stop and have a cup of tea. Very, very simple. Or sometimes I'll put a song on and I'll have a dance. Moving your body can be really fantastic for moving energy and releasing negative energy. Whatever it is that works for you, like, give that a try. See if it works. But also, most importantly, just know that it happens to everybody. Even the most chilled, polished entrepreneur you can think of at some point will have felt overwhelmed. And yes, perhaps they figured out a way to manage it, and perhaps they manage it beautifully now. And perhaps there's something that we can all learn from that person that we can do for ourselves too. However, just know that you're not alone. And this does happen to every human. You're not alone. And it doesn't make you any less worthy. If anything, welcome to the club, friend, because you're in good company. And we've all been there in some degree. Now, I hope this is giving you a little bit of insight into what it can be like and what you can do for yourself if you're feeling overwhelmed. I'm sending massive love to you all, and I'll see you next time.
If you're loving our Pretty podcast, come on over to Social Pretties, our online safe house and sisterhood community. It's a safe space where female entrepreneurs connect and thrive in a warm, welcoming fold of pretty amazing women. You'll find an easy redirect in the description, and I can't wait to see you in there. And depending on where you're listening right now, we would love it if you would click subscribe or follow so that you can be the first to know when our new podcasts come out.